Red Auerbach is often celebrated as a genius, but for Charles Barkley and Magic Johnson, he was a bad coach in the ways that mattered most to players. Not bad because he didn't win, but bad because he ruled through control, favoritism, and an outdated vision that left no room for individuality or fairness to them. Red wasn't a teacher of the game. He was a gatekeeper who decided whose greatness counted and whose didn't, and that resentment never faded. Before diving deeper into this anger-filled breakdown of his legacy, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us, because this story challenges everything you think you know about Red. Auerbach Magic's anger is quiet but sharp, built from years of watching Boston treated like basketball royalty, while everyone else fought for acknowledgement. He believes Red didn't just coach teams, he shaped narratives and controlled perception. To Magic, Red decided who belonged in the inner circle of greatness. The Celtics were protected, celebrated, and defended at all costs. Outsiders had to fight twice as hard for half the respect. That imbalance is where Magic's resentment was born. Charles Barkley's frustration comes louder, heavier, and far more personal. He doesn't soften his words because his experience never felt gentle in his eyes. Red Auerbach stood for everything that boxed players in. He saw Red as a man who valued control over creativity and structure over individuality. That mindset clashed violently with Barkley's personality and style. Barkley didn't want permission to be great. Red's system never allowed that freedom. Magic remembers walking into Boston arenas feeling like the game was already decided by history before the ball was even tipped. The past hung in the air like a warning. Red's presence was everywhere, even when he wasn't on the bench. It felt like stepping into someone else's house where the rules were already written. That kind of dominance changes how games are experienced. You don't just play the opponent, you play the legacy. Barkley talks about how Red decided which players were right for basketball and which ones were problems. Players like Barkley were tolerated, not embraced. They didn't fit the clean image Red preferred to protect. To Barkley, Red's legacy wasn't only about winning championships. It was about deciding who deserved respect without question and who had to earn it every single night. Magic's anger sharpens when he talks about fairness. He respects greatness, but he resents imbalance more than anything. He believed Red Auerbach tilted the scale in Boston's favor. Celtics legends were celebrated endlessly, while other dynasties had to constantly prove themselves. Championships outside Boston felt like they came with conditions. As if only Red could validate them, Barkley pushes deeper, saying Red never understood players who didn't come from his mold. He believes Red loved soldiers more than artists. Discipline was rewarded, expression was punished. That philosophy clashed with the evolution of the game. Basketball was changing, but Red refused to change with it. In Barkley's eyes, that refusal held the game back. Magic reflects on how Red's shadow followed the league long after his coaching days ended. Even in the 1990s, old loyalties still shaped conversations. Magic felt the past was constantly protected at the expense of the present. It angered him that the league couldn't fully move forward. One man's vision still controlled the story, and that story never felt balanced. Barkley's voice carries resentment when he talks about how Red spoke about modern players. He felt dismissed and undervalued, like his era had to defend itself against unfair comparisons. Barkley believed Red viewed new stars through old victories. He never fully accepted that the game had evolved. That dismissal cut deeper than criticism. Magic describes Red as brilliant but stubborn, a man who refused to release control even when the league outgrew him. That stubbornness is where respect slowly turned into anger. Greatness should adapt with time. Red chose to guard his legacy instead. To Magic, that choice was selfish. Barkley talks about how Red valued championships over humanity. He felt Red never cared about what players carried off the court. Only what they delivered between the lines mattered. There was no empathy in that approach. Barkley questioned whether winning alone should define greatness to him. Basketball was always more than rings. Magic remembers comments from Red that cut deeper than rivalry. It wasn't loud trash talk or open disrespect. It was quiet dismissal, a subtle way of saying some players would never belong. That kind of exclusion stays with you forever, even when your career speaks loudly. Magic never forgot those moments. Barkley's anger spikes when he talks about respect. He didn't crave Red's approval, but he hated that one man could shape how history judged entire careers. Red Auerbach felt less like a coach to him, and more like a judge deciding who mattered. That authority bothered Barkley more than any loss. Magic admits Red's brilliance complicated everything. It's easy to dismiss someone who failed. Red never failed. He won too much, and that success made his influence unavoidable. Magic hated that even as an opponent, he had to acknowledge Red's fingerprints everywhere. That reality fueled the frustration. Barkley calls Red out for clinging to old hierarchies. He believed Red wanted players to know their place, to stay quiet and fall in line. Barkley never belonged to that world, and he never wanted to. His resistance was personal and permanent. Magic described describes the frustration of building something new while old power refused to step aside. He felt red represented a wall, not a bridge. Walls protect the past, they don't build the future. Basketball needed openness, not gatekeeping. Red chose preservation over progress. That choice still irritates Magic. Barkley speaks about freedom, or the lack of it. He felt Red's philosophy rewarded obedience and punished personality. That felt like an attack on the soul of the game. Basketball was meant to breathe and evolve. Red's vision kept it boxed in. Barkley never forgave that. Magic reflects on how Red treated rival greatness. Championships outside Boston were acknowledged, but rarely celebrated. Magic felt the imbalance every time history was discussed. Some greatness was protected, other greatness was questioned. That difference mattered. Barkley's anger becomes more philosophical. He questions whether Red loved basketball or simply loved winning. To Barkley, those are not the same thing. Basketball is expression, connection, and emotion. Winning without understanding players felt empty. Red chose results over relationships. Magic admits facing Red's Celtics felt like facing an institution, not just a team, but a system backed by history. That kind of dominance breeds resentment, especially when it feels protected by narrative. Magic carried that feeling for years. It never fully faded. Barkley talks about legacy control, how Red positioned himself as the guardian of basketball's past. That authority bothered him deeply. Losing games never hurt as much as losing control of a story. Red controlled the story, and Barkley refused to accept that. Magic sees Red as a man who shaped generations, but refused to listen to them. He influenced the league, but ignored its evolution. That refusal turned admiration into anger. Power without listening becomes oppression. Magic felt that clearly. Barkley believes Red never trusted players enough to truly lead. Everything had to go through his vision. Players weren't partners, they were tools. Barkley rejected that idea entirely. Basketball to him was shared ownership. Red never allowed that. Magic says Red's influence lingered like an echo. Long after the whistle blew on his career, the echo still irritates him today. It reminds him how hard change can be, especially when history refuses to loosen its grip. Barkley admits his anger isn't about hatred, it's about resistance. He refused to let one man define greatness. Barkley defined it on his own terms, and he stands by that choice. Magic closes by saying Red Auerbach was powerful, brilliant, and controlling all at once. That combination leaves scars behind. You can respect the wins and still question the cost. Magic never separated the two. Barkley adds that Red built an empire, and empires always create enemies, whether they intend to or not. Power always has consequences. Together, their anger settles into something heavier than rivalry, a shared understanding that Red Auerbach wasn't just a coach. He was a force that shaped careers without ever coaching them, and that kind of power is impossible to ignore or forgive. Barkley leans back, thinking about how Red's shadow stretched even over players who never faced him directly. The stories, the praise, the reverence, all of it created pressure that weighed on everyone else. Young stars entering, the league had to contend with a history they didn't shape, and Red's name hung over every debate about greatness. That constant comparison, Barkley says, fueled frustration more than any loss ever could. It wasn't just competition, it was judgment from beyond the court. Red's influence was invisible, but suffocating. Magic reflects on how even teammates felt the weight of Red's legacy. Conversations in locker rooms, in front offices, and on broadcasts always circled back to Boston's past, to championships that seemed untouchable. That environment made players second-guess themselves, feel they had to measure up to standards set decades earlier. Magic hated the idea that the present could never stand on its own. Red's empire dictated the narrative, and every move outside Boston was shadowed by it. It left resentment simmering quietly beneath the surface. Barkley's tone hardens as he recalls the subtle manipulations Red used to protect his image. Players who challenged him were labeled as difficult or reckless, while those who fit neatly into his system were celebrated endlessly. That control over perception, Barkley says, shaped careers as much as any coach's strategy. It wasn't enough to win games. You had to win approval, and Barkley refused to let anyone, no matter how legendary, decide the value of his effort. Magic adds that Red's brilliance made the frustration worse because it was undeniable. You couldn't dismiss his accomplishments or the genius of his strategies. That success demanded recognition even from those who resented him. Magic admits it created a conflict, respect for what Red built versus anger at how it was enforced. Every Celtics dynasty became a reminder of what could be achieved under control and order, but also a reminder of what freedom in the game looked like when it was stifled. Together, Barkley and Magic conclude that Red Auerbach's story is complicated. He was a man who reshaped basketball and defined a dynasty, but his methods left scars on players who demanded more than obedience. Legacy isn't just championships and rings. It's the way you shape the people who play the game. And for Barkley and Magic, Red's influence, brilliance, and rigidity created lessons wrapped in frustration, a force impossible to ignore and impossible to fully forgive.